So welcome everyone, and we're excited to bring you this updated webinar from eAssist. I can't wait to get started. I'm actually watching as everyone's getting signed on, so I want to go over some of the guidelines, and I wanted Chuck to give us a little update on the supplies and what's going on with the supplies and what's out there. I hear some good things are coming our way. I hear that there's possibly going to be a new code out that will help us with some of the OSHA stuff that we have to do. So I don't know when that's going to be released. I've just heard it's out there. It's not, official yet. Hopefully it'll be released soon. But anyway, while we're waiting to get everybody on, I would love for Chuck to just to give us a little bit of update about, the supply and demand and how Benco is working with that. So Chuck, you want to give us some updates?
Sure, Kay. Thank you for asking. My name is Chuck Cohen. I'm one of the two managing directors of Benco. And before we get started today, the question that we're getting asked the most often is, what does your supply chain look like for PPE, personal protective equipment? What can we expect? And will we still be able to practice dentistry going forward when dentistry reopens? And so just to give you a few talking points, number one is, yes, you will be able to practice again. What I can say this week, which I couldn't say last week, was we've already gotten our first group of shipments of N95 masks. And the good news is 3M, one of our most reliable and well-known suppliers, has really stepped up, and they're producing tons and tons of N95 masks. Just to let you know, we understand and we have seen there's a lot of counterfeits out there. There's KN95s, there's all kinds of masks that don't pass our smell test. We would really give everyone advice that everybody should only buy from a trusted supplier, both for the distributor and the manufacturer, and we're really excited to be working with 3M on the project. In addition, we're starting to get in more face shields and more gowns and disposable products and clothing so you can practice. We are interviewing actively 4 or 5 options for air quality, air purification, or disinfection systems. So we're looking at those. We very much do not want to come out with something that will not do the job. So we are doing a lot of work, and we would very strongly encourage everyone in this call to hold off before making a purchase. These things are thousands and thousands of dollars. Don't buy something that may not work for the new regulations, whatever they are going out. And we are waiting, we're actively looking at the CDC, the ADA, waiting for guidance, as well as talking to 5 or 6 different equipment vendors. So hang in there. It's all going to be fine at the end. And thank you for being part of today's call.
Wow, that's a fantastic update. We have 3 dentists on here with us, so I'm sure they probably also enjoyed that update, because I'm sure they're wanting to get back and start seeing their patients also. So before we get started, I just need to go over some of the guidelines to make sure that we're really clear on how the CE works, because Benco is really excited about that. I also want to make sure I give a really good shout out to all of our clients and all of our TRs. I know they miss seeing your faces, so hopefully we'll all be back together really soon. I'm sure they've all tried to stay in touch with you via phone. But if you need anything, please reach out to your Benco territory reps. They're here to help you. I know they want to help you, and I know that they are really helping us promote these webinars, so we really appreciate that. So number 1, with the CEs, make sure that you registered with your legal name, what's on your certificate, because if you didn't, when we send you back your certificate, it'll have that name on it, and sometimes the license won't accept it if your name is different on your license. That's really important. The other thing that's important is that make sure that if you registered for this seminar that you actually sign in for it. So don't watch it with someone else. Make sure that you actually sign in, because we can actually see your name and your login time, and we need to make sure that you're on it. In order to stay on, or in order to receive your CE, you'll also need to stay on for the complete hour. So they are time stamped, and we want to make sure that we follow the guidelines that we need to make sure that we give you your CEs properly. So make sure that you watch it on your own device and sign in so that we know it. Something else that I want to remind you of, if you're signed in on your cell phone, this is something that, we're kind of learning how this goes. My CE department called me and said, we can only see the cell phone number. So what I'm going to ask you to do is, if you log in on your cell phone, it's no problem. Just send us an email to Benco, to practicecoaching@benco.com. Give us your cell phone number and your name, and then we'll be able to cross-reference that. So again, if you logged in watching this webinar on your cell phone, please email us your phone number and your name and which seminar you attended, and we'll definitely make sure that we cross-reference that. You'll also be receiving a a survey afterwards. We really want your feedback. We want to know what we can do for you to make sure that we're giving you all the things that you want while you're at home. And so please, on the survey, tell us, okay, we need to know more about this, or we need to know more about that. We have so many wonderful speakers out there in the dental field that want to jump on and help. So please make sure you send us that. Also, as we're going through the webinar, you'll see there's a question and answer slot. All I would like for you to do is type in your question. Sarah from the Assist team is actually going to be coming in and letting them know at different points during the presentation. So we will try to answer a lot of your questions. If for some reason we don't get to all of your questions, this team has promised me that they would follow up with you via email. So if you have a question and we don't get to it, this eAssist team will promise they will take care of you, and they have done an amazing job so far. So with all that said, this is my favorite part of the seminar, is that I get to introduce what I call my amazing boss. He is Benco's managing director, one of two. I just love the Cohen family. I just had a call with Larry Cohen this morning. You can't work for a better group of people. And I think Chuck has gone out of his way to make sure that we are doing everything we can for our customers. And not only that, he has gone out of his way to make sure he's taking care of us as his team. So with that being said, I would like to introduce Chuck Cohen, the managing director of Benco Dental.
Well, Kay, thank you very much. And your introductions of me are they make me laugh and smile. So thank you very much. And we're so glad to have you on our team. As everyone at Benco knows, we all work for Kay. She's high energy. She understands what to do. And she and Leah and the rest of the Practice Solutions team have been tireless in setting up these seminars and webinars. So thank you very much, Kay. I only hope to live up to your introduction someday. So this is, I believe, our 8th or 9th Coping with During Crisis webinar, our 9th. And we are very, very pleased to have a repeat presenter today. So the repeat presenter is the eAssist team. We've got 2 dentists and a lawyer. They actually practice dentistry, the 2 dentists do, and the lawyer actually does lawyering. And they're going to be here today to talk about their experience in signing up for the PPP program, what worked, what didn't work from the dentist perspective. I think we all know that the folks in Washington are working very hard to help us all get out of the situation that we're in with COVID-19. And every industry is experiencing this current situation differently. Dentistry is different than medicine. It's different than restaurants, different than hair salons. These guys have the advantage of bringing their experience as dental practice owners to the program today, and they're going to spend some time talking about how to apply, what the ins and outs are, and how to make sure you get the most value you can out of these programs. So here at Benco, we are proud to say we are with you, we support you, we are here to help all of us in dentistry get out of the current situation. So everything's going to be okay. These guys are going to help us get there. So gentlemen, I turn it over to you. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Chuck. Thank you so much. And thank you, Kay. I agree with you, Chuck. There will be a better day. This is an interesting turn in our history, and times will become better. I'm convinced of it. Hope springs eternal. And I think I was listening to President Trump and the task force yesterday, and they were making it pretty clear that things are going to turn around. And I heard from someone who was the CEO of a hospital chain here in Utah, who said he heard from the governor that they've got a lot of hospitals and the beds aren't being used. They've furloughed a lot of nurses, and they're planning on turning things back on sooner rather than later. So I think there's a lot of hope here, and we've turned a tide. I believe that. So what we hope you learn from your hour with us today are 3 things. Any changes that have been made to the CARES Act since the bill was passed and has been reinterpreted at least 3 times now by the SBA, including just a few days ago, they added some more guidance. And lenders are then using that guidance. We want you to understand it so you can get the most value, or if you haven't already applied, understand exactly how to do it the right way. We also hope that we're going to share with you our experience of applying for the PPP and for the EIDL loan. I've applied to 4 different banks. At first I thought that was against the rules, and then I realized some of the banks aren't even processing it to the SBA. They're using their own forms and making it more cumbersome and harder than it needs to be. And so we actually have some slides that show you exactly what we've done. And then we hope by the time we're finished, you'll have a thorough action plan to not only get these funds that are now available to us as dental practice owners, but also having a plan in place right now to treat emergency and urgent care if you can in your state legally. Who are we? My name is James Anderson. I'm a practicing dentist, like Chuck said. I graduated from OHSU in 2002. I'm the co-chair of the Roseman Dental School MBA Advisory Board. I'm also an associate professor at the Roseman Dental MBA program. Interesting program, unique program they have there. I'm a Harvard HBS Business School alum, and I have a BS in finance from BYU. Taylor.
My name is Taylor Anderson. It's a pleasure to be participating again. I'm a business lawyer, so I'm the non-dentist on the panel here today. I've been practicing for about 17 years. I received a law degree and an MBA from Willamette University, and co-founded my own law firm here in Utah a number of years ago, and joined eAssist full-time as general counsel about a year ago.
Great, and I'm Brian Borg. I am a practicing dentist here in Utah. I've started and owned 3 dental offices, and mostly I'm just like you. I'm just trying to navigate through these loans and keep my practice alive.
Now, Dr. Willis isn't with us today. He was going to be on the panel. He's doing an emergency molar root canal right now, endo. He texted us saying, if someone wants to finish this up, I can join, but maybe he'll come, maybe he won't. He's a great member of our
would
team.
do it.
I know. So who are we? eAssist, we're America's #1 dental billing service provider. We started the company 10 years ago to solve our own problems, to bill insurance companies. We act as an assistant for your front office staff, ensuring that you are paid what's rightfully owed to you by the insurance companies. We have over 800 people that work for us, and we serve thousands of dentists across the country. We've won a bunch of awards. You can see them there. Why are we doing this? Why are we becoming experts in delivering peace of mind to dentists? Because that's our core purpose. eAssist was built to deliver peace of mind, to become a backbone of a practice and help you know that you can sleep well at night, that money's coming in, including the PPP stuff. And we'll discuss our ins and outs here in a minute. But we're dentists helping dentists. It's important to understand this. Taylor, what does the rest of this say about legal advice, tax advice?
So yeah, consistent with that, of course, we're not providing legal or tax advice. There's a lot of details. We're not claiming to cover all of them. As will be demonstrated and discussed on the webinar today, there are a number of changes that have happened, regulations that will continue to come out, and updates. We're covering some of those today. Of course, you should consult with your own professional advisor to make sure you get the advice and counsel you need for your particular situation. That said, we're really happy to share with you what we've been learning and doing over the past few weeks. Again, a brief overview, the way that the CARES Act can help dentists. We're going to be focusing, and as many of us are of course aware of the new kind of loan, the PPP, and the modifications to other types of SBA loans that have made it easier for dentists to get funds. You can borrow from your 401k. There's relief for certain federal loans, including federal student loans. There's also the potential for the payroll tax credit, $5,000 quarterly maximum per employee. So these are other ways, a number of ways that dentists can be helped with these new laws.
We reviewed those before in our last webinar. Thanks, Kay, for having us on a few days ago. And so now we're focusing what's changed. So if you want to learn more details about all the rest of that, then please review the last webinar we did with Benco and the Benco team. We're going to talk about these 3 loans that have been updated in the CARES Act and how they've been modified. And I guess the right term is interpreted by the SBA, taking what the bill says and even modifying the language a little bit and filling in some details so that lenders know what they're supposed to do. The first is the EIDL loan. We'll talk about what the EIDL loan is. Most of you are aware of it. But Taylor, what are the changes that have been made by this guidance that the SBA has released 3, or is it 4 times now? I mean, how many letters have they given out now to lenders?
Well, there was an interim rule, and then there's an ongoing fact sheet that's been updated at least 3 times.
Yep,
over the past few days. So, on the EIDL loans, here's some updates. It's taking time to process these. That's not so much a surprise, but it turns out that only recently it seemed from what we're learning and experiencing that they're actually starting to process these and even pay them out. It looks like the loan amounts could be much less than the $2 million maximum that's authorized under the act, and it looks like you certainly can still apply, and you may still even end up being eligible for the up to $10,000 advance. One of the things we learned, including Brian and I received an email yesterday And if you've applied, many of you may have already, but the SBA is limiting the $10,000 advance. They're giving you $1,000 per employee up to a maximum of $10,000. And no disrespect to the SBA, but they certainly haven't kept with the 3-day rule to get that $10,000 advance out.
That was in the bill.
They're trying.
You know, we talked about this on our last webinar with the Benco team, and we weren't sure if you could still apply for this once you applied for the PPP, because the PPP application itself says, are you rolling in your 10K advance that you've already received as you apply for the PPP? At that point in time, last Friday, no one had received it. So you're filling out this form saying, are you rolling in something you've already received? And no one's received it. I didn't receive it, so I didn't say yes on my applications because I hadn't yet received it. But we're hearing now that it's starting to hit. And we did a little poll, and there are not just a very small percentage of dentists, we'll get to that poll in a minute, that have actually received something here. And I think yesterday, some of our eAssist team started to receive some of these things. So it is coming down the pike. You can still apply for that. And that's different guidance than we gave last time. And they haven't closed it off. And you still may be eligible for the 10K advance because they're looking at all the applicants in aggregate before they start handing it out. So Brian, why don't you tell us again what the EIDL loan is briefly here for those that haven't applied for it or don't know exactly what it is.
Well, just to double emphasize your point, you know, receiving that email, I am in the middle of, I've been approved for my PPP loan, and I'm still waiting for documents to sign. So I'm right in the middle of it. And now I get this email that says, okay, now you got your EIDL loan too. So there is some juggling there and some decisions that I need to make. But specifically with the EIDL loan, the biggest thing that I'm looking at this is from a dental point of view is if I'm deciding between one or the other, there are some differences. The big thing is the term. With the EIDL loan, it's a 30-year term. The other thing is you can take out probably more. We're seeing that it's not the $2 million max, but it's probably more than just your 2.5 times that we know about from your payroll that comes from the PPP. But the interest rates are slightly different. You can see it's 3.75 instead of the 1. We'll get to the PPP loan. But biggest thing on this is that you can maybe take out more and you can make it spread out longer. So if this is something that you're desiring, you want more money or you want to use it for different things than the PPP loan, this is an option for you.
But I think I want to jump in here, Brian. The one thing that also is very, very different than the PPP is that you can use this not just for payroll. That 10K advance of the EIDL that you get right away, you're only supposed to use that for payroll. But the rest of this, the rest of the loan can be used to pay fixed debts, for other expenses and bills that can't be paid because of the disaster's impact. That leaves it pretty much wide open to almost anything based on the language that we're seeing here. And they might modify it some more with more guidance in time once the bulk of these loans start to go out. Brian, you mentioned that it also has a turnaround time of 3 days. I think Terry, you mentioned that. And there's a cash advance of up to 10K. We've talked about that now. But now we know for certain that it's based on the amount of advance you will receive is based on how many employees you put down in that form, or how many you have. So if you have 1 employee, you'll get $1,000. If you have 5, you'll get 5,000. If you have 10 or more, you'll get 10,000. At least that's what the letter said yesterday that we received.
And that we just learned that this week, right? I mean, that's different.
We announced it yesterday. It was on the Boston's SBA website. Then they took it down. And then we announced it yesterday in our webinar. We had about 1,000 people on it, I think. And then all of a sudden the SBA sends us an email. So maybe they were listening to our webinar and they heard what we said.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just teasing, but
it's just an example of how much this is changing day to day.
James, before we leave the EIDL, another important point, the difference between the EIDL and the PPP is, as dentists are making this decision, the deferment, the SBA has made clear now, deferment on the EIDL is 1 year. You don't pay anything for a year. It's 6 months on the PPP.
Ah, great point. And that was released yesterday, right? The new guidance.
It became very clear yesterday. It was in their email. Yeah.
Okay. The SBA Express loan is also something else that's been modified in the CARES Act. The limit went from 350,000 to $1 million. We'll talk about what that loan is in a minute. Most of you are aware of it that were on our webinar last time. But Taylor, what's changed with the SBA Express loan?
Just a quick note. In an attempt to help people, small businesses kind of bridge the gap, so to speak, they've authorized a temporary kind of 7A express loan called the SBA Express Bridge Loan. So you have to have a pre-existing relationship with your lender. The maximum is only 25 grand. Interest rate isn't great, but it's fast turnaround, the potential for fast cash, and it can be repaid, from proceeds from your EIDL loan.
Yeah, interesting. Because the EIDL loan may take about 3 months to get the bulk of it.
Right.
It's been around for a long time, and usually that's how long it takes in the past. But Brian, would you mind just kind of doing a quick overview of the SBA Express loan for folks?
Absolutely. So maximum amount is 1 million. It's up from 350,000, and this loan has been available for forever, for a long time. But the maximum amount being changed is the big change from in the CARES Act. So some people have been using this loan for a long period of time, but it's been restricted, and they don't use it because they can only get $350,000. So with it being bumped up to $1 million, this loan may be something that you can use. The unique thing with this is you can use it to purchase real estate. So I know a lot of dentists that want to build their practice, build their building, and put it all into one. If you can keep it under $1 million, this may be something that you may want to take advantage of at this time. It may be an opportune time to do it. Term life is up to 7 years with the maturity extensions permitted. Up to 6 months, not quite as much as the EIDL loan, but the deferment is up to 6 months. No personal guarantee, and the turnaround time is supposed to be 36 hours. We're finding that that's not always the case, but it's express loan. That's the idea. It's supposed to be able to come fast.
Some of these things have already changed since our last webinar. Like the term used to be 10 years. Now it's down to 7 with some maturity extensions, and the personal guarantee may or may not change too. Like this is so fluid. It's been done in a week and a half, right? Put together by the Secretary of Treasury and Congress with the bills. So what I want to emphasize though is that you can use this for purchasing real estate, like what Brian said, and that is very unique. But I contacted my bank, that I was one of the banks of the 4 that I applied for the PPP. We'll get into that in a minute. And I said, hey, I want to apply for the express loan. And he said, oh, we do those, but we're not doing those right now. All of our focus is on the PPP. So contact us later. Point is, there are some banks that get it, some banks that don't. You might have to hunt around to find your SBA Express loan lender, like what I had to do to find a PPP lender that could actually get it put into the SBA system. It's one thing just to take the form and fill out the bank's forms that they're creating. It's another to actually have it be entered in by the bank into the SBA online portal for lenders only. And again, we're going to talk more about that. All right. So updates to the Paycheck Protection Program. Taylor, the big one, PPP, the brand new SBA loan 7A that was released just a week and a half ago. What are the changes?
Right, some important ones that we want to make sure we touch on. The SBA has made clear that and have interpreted the CARES Act to mean you cannot include independent contractor or sole proprietor pay in calculating your payroll costs. And we're going to talk more about that. But I mean, individual contractors and sole proprietors can apply for their own PPP loans. The fact that they, had to, in several places in their interim rule, try to explain that again is reflective of the fact that there was understandably confusion on that point. And this is how they've come down on that.
Okay, I'm going to jump in. There was a 4-day window because the bill makes it clear, at least to most of us, that independent contractors can be included in your payroll cost, and then you times 2.5 times that. Even Adam Schiff and the ADA mentioned that when they first did their first webinars a few weeks ago. We believe that too. And there was a 4-day window where many bankers also believe that. And because of that, in the most recent guidance letter Q&A that the SBA gave to lenders, they actually say, if you were a lender and you included independent contractors in your PPP calculation and you already put it in the system, we will honor that. So you had a 4-day window if you could find the right lender to have independent contractors included in your PPP. I was looking for the right lender. I went all over the place.
Yeah.
And went to Idaho. And then I found a guy, and then on my way home, they're like, oh, we just heard, it was on Tuesday. Oh, we just heard, but if you would have been here on Monday, we would have done it. But we just heard now that you can't. And so we're taking it out. We'll teach you how they can apply. So we're going to go over that in just a minute.
Yeah. No, and that's point number 2, James, that you've covered there. Again, it's been fluid. And so the SBA is trying to acknowledge that. Let me just hit the last 2 updates on the slide. So they've made clear that your 8-week forgiveness calculation period, we'll talk more about it in a minute, starts when you receive your first loan proceeds. And then there's a new guideline from the SBA. Lenders are apparently supposed to disperse those proceeds within 10 days of loan approval. Okay, and then they've made clear as well, the SBA, more details will be coming about the forgiveness process requirements. We don't know what those are yet, other than what the CARES Act already says.
I want to mention something here. I was listening to Secretary of Treasury yesterday during their briefing, and he said at one point he said there was 220 billion that has already been funded of the 349 that's authorized by Congress. And then he said there's 227 billion. So in like 5 minutes, another $7 billion was authorized by these guys, which scares me to death. There are some consultants who are saying, one thing I've learned about dentistry, dentists all have different opinions, right? So do CPAs and lawyers, and they all think they're right. So you got to kind of trust your gut and go with what you think is right too. What we're saying is a bird in the hand is worth more than two in a bush. Isn't that what they teach on Geico, those commercials, I think? I don't know. So you can wait and hope that when your office reopens, you then apply, or maybe a week before you think you're going to reopen, like if you're in Washington, I think it's May 18th. And then you apply for the PPP, and then you get it if there's anything left in there. And even during the call yesterday, President Trump said, Steve's got to go. He's got to go. He has an emergency. He's got to go. He's got to go back to work, the Secretary of the Treasury. And one of the reporters said, what's the emergency? And he said, well, he's negotiating the tap off of this PPP. We got to get more money for these guys, but it's not done. So our philosophy has been get it in, get approved, then delay the process as long as you possibly can until we can reopen. In Utah, we're supposed to open up April 26th. And based on what I heard, that's probably going to happen. And so if that's the case, I got at least a couple of days to sign the DocuSign. I don't know how many days that comes from the SBA once you've been approved. It comes through your bank by the SBA, being backed by the SBA. Then you got 10 days to take it, and the clock doesn't start until you actually take it. So you could actually tell the lender, hey, I don't want it. Like, hold on to it as long as you possibly can. I had one banker up in Idaho who said, hey, we can hold on to this as long as you want. 30 days, 45 days. Now, the SBA has come back and said, no, you can't. You got to disperse it in 10. But the money goes, the way the process goes with the PPP, you're not getting the money from the SBA. You're getting the money from the bank. And the bank is then getting the money from the SBA. So the loan actually comes from the bank itself. So keep that in mind as you kind of navigate these waters. Try to delay it as long as you can. But that's our strategy. Right, Brian? Is that the strategy?
That's right. One thing that James has always taught me, I've known James for a long time. He says, always be learning. Doesn't matter who you're learning from. So James has a Harvard education, but he still learns from Geico commercials.
I like those guys.
I think that's right. But the other thing I saw this morning that President Trump is just tweeting out still. He's still trying to get this cap extended. So, it makes me a little nervous that I don't have money in my funds yet. And that's why I emailed James and said, do you have money in your funds yet or in your bank yet? Because Trump still hasn't got this extension, and I'm worried that we're going to be at this cap. So I'm of the opinion, you want to get it in sooner than later. The other point that James made, especially with this PPP loan, is that it is a little bit bank to bank, lender to lender. That's something that we've discovered, especially when we're talking about the maximum amount of the loan. The PPP loan, on this slide, you'll see that it talks mostly about how much the loan you can get. Of course, we know most dentists are going to be under 500 employees. Big thing that we've learned over the last week is independent contractors. They're difficult to get into this loan. It's really easy to get the W-2s. But it's the payroll cost. And you can see on the bottom there on that slide, the 6 things that we've known that these are the things that we can for surely count as a payroll cost. I don't know of anybody that gives tips and things in dentistry, but you have the W-2s, you have, go back one more on that, your retirement, your state, local taxes, health benefits. So those things can be counted as your loan costs and the amount that you're gonna actually get for your loan.
And Brian will talk about this, but we have a little calculator on our website that includes all this stuff to make it really easy. If you haven't yet applied for the PPP, where you could easily put it all in, so it's more than just your payroll.
Yeah, the big thing with this PPP loan is that it's paycheck protection. So it's the payroll costs, and that's what determines our loan. And again, it is a little bit. We're finding that it is a little bit lender to lender. In fact, Warren His bank said, we only want the last 3 months or last 2 months average of what your payroll costs have been. I've applied to 2 banks, and one bank wanted a very, very detailed 941 W-3s, everything for the last year, all calculated out, all the tax. And then another bank said, no, we just want one of your 941s and we can average it out to that. So we're finding that it is somewhat dependent on your lender and exactly what they're going to require as far as the payroll costs, what your payroll cost is.
That could be a significant swing. I mean, for one of my entities, it was a $200,000 swing. If you just use the last quarter of this year, 941s versus the last 4 quarters.
Sure. If your company's growing like yours, you're going to be paying a lot more payroll in the last 2 months.
I know, it's a big deal. We'll talk more about choosing a bank and how you find which banks are working and which ones aren't, which ones are making it more complicated than it needs to be.
Perfect. So the interest rate on that is 1%. No personal guarantee. These things are nice about these loans. Deferment, again, it's 6 months, a little less than the EIDL. Turnaround time is, we're finding 2 weeks. We're about 10 days into my application, and then that sounds to be about right so far. And is there forgiveness? This is the big part of the PPP loan. This is what makes everybody love this loan, and this is why most dentists are choosing it, is because you get forgiveness, and that we'll talk about that.
We're even going to mention some strategies on if you get the money now and your practice isn't open, how do you still get the total amount forgiven under the current guidance right now? When we get into that, we'll talk about maybe prepaying your folks, maybe giving them a bonus afterwards. Maybe near the end, you pay them for the next couple of weeks to get it all in. Don't pay them now until you can open again. So there's a number of strategies. We'll talk about what we can and cannot do. Again, it might change with more guidance, but right now, under the interpretation, we'll describe what it is we're planning on doing. But this is a question we get all the time. If you're a my dental practices are organized so that they're C corporations, and I take management fees and I zero out some stuff that way, and so I don't get taxed twice. But also I have another entity that's an independent contractor. It's me. It's doing dentistry, and my dental office then charges, or I charge my independent contractor stuff. I charge my dental office, and we've been audited for that and we passed for payload classification. Like, it all worked. And Brian, I think yours is set up the same way. Is that right?
Yep.
So I do have some W-2 that comes from me for my office.
That's
and
right.
then I have this other company that comes in and we do that. And so because of that process, this other company can actually apply for a PPP by itself. And because it doesn't have any employees but me, the way you calculate that PPP loan balance is 2.5 times my average income over the last year. So they ask for, instead of asking for a W-3, which is a summary of all your W-2s for the last year. So every business has one W-3. Or all your 941s, a form that you get on how much you paid for payroll every single quarter that you give the IRS, so they can make sure you're paying your right tax. So instead of asking for that, if you're an independent contractor applying, it just asks, the bankers are asking for your last year's tax return, and then they divide it by 12. And they say that's how much you're eligible for, times by 2.5. For most of us as dentists, it's going to be the max, over 100,000. And so it's 8,333 times by 2. It's about 2.5. It's about $20,000 you're eligible for. And my little company got it.
Yeah.
So, but if you're taking a draw out instead, if you're set up as maybe a professional corporation and you are, or a sole proprietor, and you don't pay yourself a W-2 wage at all, and you only take out really a dividend to pay yourself, the PPP isn't the Dividend Protection Act. It's a Payroll Protection Act. And that's why so many bankers at first thought, well, it's got to include some independent contractor stuff, and so it'll be 2.5 times what you pay your contractors and what you pay your contracted employees that you gave 1099s to, as well as any W-2s that you gave out. But with that guidance changing, and the SBA saying you can only include independent contractor stuff if you are an independent contractor applying, there really is a category of dentists or small business owners that isn't being included here. You now have employers, and you don't include yourself. You just take your W-3 and you times it by 2.5 plus some other stuff in the payroll benefits and things and state taxes. And that's what your loan amount is going to be for the PPP. Then They take an independent contractor or a sole proprietor that has 0 employees, and they just take their tax return, divide that by 12, times that by 2.5, and that's how much that entity is eligible. What about the middle guys? What about the dentists that pay themselves like a draw here and have 5 employees? What do you do? Because you haven't been paying yourself as a W-2, you haven't been giving yourself a 1099, you've just been taking a draw. Well, you might be in trouble here. There's a couple strategies here to kind of offset that, and let me explain how they might overlap. Again, it's not the dividend or draw protection program, it's the payroll. So what we're saying here is most lenders will say you can't include yourself. You cannot. That's been our experience. Has it been yours? You can't include yourself. It's only whatever you pay to your employees plus state taxes plus healthcare benefits plus some retirement stuff. We times that by 2.5 because you have employees. But there are some other avenues here that can help you. Like the EIDL loan, that isn't calculated. That doesn't deduct from your PPP loan amount. It does deduct from what you're forgiven on. It's part of the forgiven loan amount. But you can get the 10K plus the 2.5 times your payroll, and that might be your only avenue to get a little something that's forgiven for you for a draw for the last couple months where your pay's been cut in half. That's option number 1. Option number 2 is you might be able to find a lender, especially if it's a credit union or a small bank that doesn't have a lot of bureaucracy put up around all of this, that might include it in your calculation. Again, the SBA doesn't ask for any evidence at all of how the bank is approving whatever loan amount you put in the PPP box, what your wages were for payroll costs. They don't. That's our understanding initially. If they come back and you default on whatever was left over that wasn't forgiven, our lenders' friends have told us, then the SBA will come back and do an audit to see if you did it incorrectly. But if you, like what the guidance that we received just a few days ago said, if you actually thought the independent contractors were a part of this, it's okay if you included that in your payroll cost, and we're still going to honor that. So they might be very forgiving here, knowing that this is something they've smashed together in 10 days, and there's some issues here. A lender might accept it. The bottom line is, I would include it in whatever your cost is, whatever you're taking out as a draw, I would include it in your PPP application, and then let your lender decide if they disagree with you or not. Some of them, most of them probably won't allow you to do that. You might find 1 or 2 that does. And if you do, that's the one you want to use. If you don't, well, another option you have is your loan amount won't be higher, but what you can do is after you get the loan, you can start paying yourself as a W-2 for the next 2 months, just for the next 2 months, and you now include yourself in those payroll costs. So for certain, 100% of what you've been given will all be deducted, even if you didn't start on time or it took you a few weeks to open up. There are some guidelines. They do check that every single month, so you just can't wait to the very end. You got a 2-month, 8-week window where you got to give yourself something here. And we'll talk more about those details in a moment. But this is the best strategy we've come up with. Still get the 10K from the EIDL, but try to get it from your lender by including it. If they reject it, well, then you can't get it, or try somewhere else until you've given up. And then the other option is make sure you include yourself as a W-2. Now you are going to pay some state or some tax there, 15% self-employment tax on that. So you kind of have to do the math to see if it's worth it to you. But Brian, was there anything else that we came up with here besides this slide to help someone that's taking a dividend to pay themselves?
No, I think we covered it all. The last strategy is that you pay going forward, you change that, and that will help you to use that. It doesn't change the loan amount that you'll be able to get, which is the problem, but you'll be able to at least use that it'll be considered payroll because now you're using it. So it's something that will be forgiven, but it'll eat up some of that other stuff that you could be using it on, like mortgage, rent, and things. And I think the next slide we'll talk a little bit about that. But
and I think James, as you mentioned, I would expect more detail from the SBA potentially regarding this independent contractor loophole or conundrum that some dentists find themselves in if they've been taking a dividend, or at least definitely we'll receive more guidance on the forgiveness process, and that could impact what we're recommending here today. But this is based on current information that we have.
Yep, great point. How does the loan forgiveness work with the PPP? Taylor, can you go into details?
Yeah, you bet. So basically, you're looking at the 8-week period after loan origination. And again, the SBA has said that starts when you receive loan proceeds, your first distribution of those proceeds. And so you look at what you spend during that 8-week period on, again, payroll costs. And they're listed here. We've gone over some of these before. But then also, it's not just payroll for purposes of forgiveness. It can include rent, mortgage interest, utilities. I think they all need to be in place, as of February 15th. Want to make sure that, it's ongoing business stuff. And then as Brian mentioned, no more than 25% of your loan can be forgiven for non-payroll expenses. They want at least 75% to go towards, again, protecting paychecks and payroll. Just a couple of things, and I think this was in our previous presentation, but remember, if you reduce full-time employee, monthly average during the 8-week period, that can cause a percentage decrease, a corresponding percentage decrease in your forgiveness amount. Also, if you reduce employee wages by more than 25% during that 8-week forgiveness period, compared to a prior period, that can reduce dollar for dollar your forgiveness amount as well. There are some additional rules. If you rehire people,
I like this one, Taylor. I'm going to jump in here. Many dentists laid off their staff and shut their offices. The last poll we did, 20% of the people that were on. And we're going to recommend you reverse that you actually furlough them, bring them back in. It'll help with forgiveness. You can do it as long as it's by the 30th. It'll also help you organize your staff better and be open for emergencies using some teledentistry and some of those strategies to make sure that you got emergencies in the chair at least 3 days a week if your state allows for that. I mean, we are real doctors, right, Brian?
Yeah,
we're here to help people. And when you have a tooth that hurts, I've had a couple of root canals. I hate to admit that. I'm a dentist. I'm not supposed to. It hurts, guys. It really hurts. So we got to help our dentists, our patients that need it. We won't abandon them. So open back up, make it grow. That furlough your guys, and you won't be penalized. Okay, Brian, would you just kind of go over how the forgiveness is going to be calculated?
Yeah,
so we've included some other details here we didn't before.
Sure. This is a little bit different. It adds some things that we did last time to help us understand. There was a lot of words on those last couple slides. So this just kind of breaks it down into us as doctors or owners. And this is just a pseudo office that we put together. So going through this, the W-2 employees, they're easy. You just add up those, and that would be like your assistants, your front desk, hygienist, your office manager. So in our situation, we put a number on this so that you can get an idea of how it works. 31,000, it's just a made up arbitrary number. And then we do have, we did include this just so a lot of owners have associate doctors. People pay them in two different ways usually. A W-2 associate doctor is real easy to calculate, and that's just your maximum amount is $8,333 a month. That's just your $100,000 a year annual. And so you can include that. Now, like we talked about, if they're paid as an independent contractor, which my associate is paid that way, he's going to have to apply for himself on his own. But in my office, I do pay myself a W-2. I don't pay myself the full amount, of course. I take dividends, I take draws and all that, but I do pay myself some W-2. In my situation, it was around $100,000, so it worked out for me. But you can only pay yourself up to the $100,000 if you take out more. Then you can add other payroll costs, such as group health insurance, sick leave, vacation, severance pay. We put a number on that of $2,000 a month, just an arbitrary number. And then, of course, state and local taxes, which is, some people have been leaving that off. Maybe it's not making a big difference, but you can add that. So you'll see at the bottom, our total average monthly payroll is $51,216. Then we just take that and times it by 2.5. That's going to give us the loan amount, how much we're going to be given to be able to be used. And then the maximum amount that we can spend on other expenses other than payroll is 25%. We put that in there and we have a calculator. We'll show it to you, but that will give you an idea. Okay, I've got payroll and this is how much I can pay. And what we were describing earlier, if you haven't been paying yourself in W-2 and you want to capitalize on that payroll, well, maybe that 25%, that $31,000 left is more than you need. Maybe your rent's cheap, maybe your mortgage is cheap, and you're going to be left with another $20,000 from that $31,000 when it's all said and done. Well, adding yourself as a W-2 and taking maybe 85% into the payroll isn't going to hurt you. So you'll at least be able to capture it that way. And that was that third strategy that James talked about. The eAssist, this is our calculator. You can go in and calculate it before you go in. It gives you an idea of how much you can use for payroll and for other expenses. And that's on our website if you'd like to go to it. So what do we do now? It depends on your situation. Of course, if you haven't applied for the PPP and you want to get in the PPP, we're recommending do that sooner than later. Remember that it's a 1% interest. It's basically free money. When we say free money, of course, that's real free money because a lot of that's going to be forgiven. And it's or your other option is to do the EIDL loan. And you can do those in conjunction if you strategically do those right. Again, the 3.75% interest rate on a 30-year term, that's a great loan. So if you're looking for funds, now's the time to capitalize on it.
Let's talk about double dipping here. So the guidance is, as long as you can apply for these two different loans and use them and get them, as long as they're for different purposes. The PPP, of course, is for payroll for the next 8 weeks. The way I'm going to do it is my EIDL loan is for working capital for the next year or two, because my office is going to be hurt.
Yeah,
I think that's how I'm going to talk to my lender about it, and that's how I'm going to do it.
Yeah, and I think what I've read is the EIDL can include payroll costs so long as it's not that 2-month period that you got the PPP for. I agree they need to be for different purposes. And then I've also read you can only have one PPP loan.
Yeah, that's right, and only one EIDL loan too. I haven't heard that you could have more than one EIDL loan.
And this is interesting. We do several of these seminars, and we've been taking polls. As you know, the latest poll that we've taken, this is interesting information, is which SBA loans have you applied for? And this is as of yesterday. You see most people are still wanting that PPP loan. Even a bigger percentage of that have, that 10% more of that have added that they want to get that $10,000 advance EIDL loan. Like we said, some of them have gotten it, some haven't. We were just finding yesterday that some people were starting to get that, and our eyebrows went up because we hadn't heard of that yet. And then last night, of course, we got some emails saying you can take that money. So they were coming through. I was joking with Taylor yesterday and said, I don't believe it. I don't think any that EIDL loan's ever going to come through. But just as soon as I said that, I got an email. So it's coming, and if you want to strategically use it, you can. The second poll that we did is, have you received any of the funds? And you can see we're still looking at that 2-week period of time. We're about 10 days into that. So we're starting to see some people that have received those funds. Most haven't received it, but a lot have been accepted and approved. So they're along the process.
I still haven't received mine. I've been approved, but I haven't received mine. Brian, have you?
No, I just received an approval letter, and they said they'll send me some documents to sign. I haven't got those documents yet, so I've got my fingers crossed.
All right, we have another 15 minutes, so let's just take 5 minutes to do some Q&A. Sarah, would you mind? Let's take maybe 1 or 2 questions and then see what we can come up with.
Great. We've got a question here from Scott. His question is specific to the PPP loan. He's trying to maximize his forgiveness, while we all know he doesn't have his staff necessarily open or his practice necessarily open. So his question is, for the PPP loan to be fully forgivable, my staff needs to be fully working by June 30th. If I pay my staff, my PPP money runs out by June 11th. If the state still has me shut down, how am I supposed to keep them on payroll June 30th when I'm not allowed to be open? I assume this would mean I'd have to pay them out of pocket in order to get the forgiveness.
Great question. And I have an idea behind that and a strategy behind it. We have something similar happening here. But Taylor, do you want to add any insight to that before?
Yeah, it's a challenge for you dentists because of your mandated closure or severely limited business operations. It's a timing issue. And to be clear again, the law says once you get your proceeds, that's when the 8 weeks starts, and you're forgiven for the approved kind of expenses that we've gone over, including payroll, during that time period. But you do want to be strategic about it. I think James can talk more about it, but definitely talk with your lender, explain the situation. And I'm hopeful that the organizations like the ADA are lobbying hard to get some clarification for for you dentists and others that are forced to be shut down during this time. Of course, this loan applies to anyone, so that's not everyone has that same issue, but we do.
Yeah, I think 70% of the businesses are still open in the country. Restaurants and dental offices and hair salons are all, and other physicians. But this is the strategy I'm taking. Again, a bird in the hand is worth more than two in the bush. It's possible that we could be wrong, that we're being too paranoid, that the Democrats and Republicans can get together and actually add more and top it off. And you can wait until May 18th. And it's possible. Come May 18th, that there still might be some funds there. I don't believe that. And so I want to make certain I've got something. And so here's a strategy I'm taking. It's been approved. I'm going to delay signing my DocuSign as long as I possibly can, making sure it doesn't go away. And then I'm going to sign and talk to the banker every day, tell them what I'm kind of doing, and then I'm going to sign it. I should get my DocuSign today, and so I'm probably going to sign it, a week from now. And as long as it doesn't go away, if there's a deadline on my DocuSign, I'm going to sign it right during the deadline. And then I'm going to call my banker and say, I want you to hold off on giving me wiring this money into my other account, because the bank I use isn't the bank that got this done for me, isn't my bank that I bank at for my dental practice. So they're just going to wire it in once it comes in, once it's been approved by the SBA. And I'm going to ask them to hold off as long as you possibly can. That's number one. Number two, I'm then not going to bring all my staff back right away. The way they look at it, the way they calculate it, is a month chunk at a time. So at the end of month 1 and the end of month 2, at least that's the guidance they're giving right now. And they might modify that and change it so it's just at the end of the whole thing. But the guidance is, when you go to get forgiven, they're going to look at how many people you had employed at the end of month 1 and what you paid them. So if I furloughed all my staff and I bring them all back on, and they're all still kind of furloughed because their hours are still all cut, but I'm open for emergencies, and I still have the same number of people. They might only be working 3 hours a week, or maybe 3 hours every 2 weeks, because we had like 47 people, and we'll just be rotating them through. I've kept my number of staff at the same number. And at the very end of what our plan is, I'm planning on telling them, I'm going to pay you a full amount as if you worked your full pay, 40 hours a week, but I'm prepaying you for the next month. This month you've actually earned, and the rest of it you haven't, but I'm going to prepay you. That's my strategy. It hasn't been outlawed yet by the SBA. And until it does, that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Then at the end of the next 8 weeks, I'll do the exact same thing. I'm going to pay you all the rest of it that you normally would get, but I'm prepaying you into the next month, maybe the next 2, whatever it is, so I can maximize whatever payment is, and call it a bonus if you want to, whatever you can to make it so you check the boxes and you're honest about it. We believe in that, absolutely. But we also believe you can be smart about strategies, and the government said we can't operate, and this is the plan. So Taylor, is there anything wrong with that? I mean, you mentioned something about prepayment, that you couldn't do some prepayment of mortgages.
On mortgages. Yeah, so right now, again, based on the information we have, I think that approach makes sense. Again, the SBA may very well, they said they're going to give us more detail on forgiveness. It's possible that some of that detail impacts, that approach for dentists, but we just don't know at this point. So I absolutely communicate with your lender, make sure they understand your situation, and see what they can do to make sure that you get the money in a time that makes sense, but that you still get the money. And you don't.
That's how we're going to do it. And the guidance right now, without a doubt, we know the guidance says you can't do some prepayment of mortgages. You can't include that, but they don't say you can't prepay your staff or give your staff bonuses or give your staff an increase, whatever, to get them to get it all forgiven. None of that's a part of it yet, and I hope not. So that's my strategy. Brian, what are you going to do?
Well, similar, a lot of similar stuff. The only thing that I would add to that is that during those weeks that I can be open from the state, full throttle, hygiene, and those things, I am going to add hours. We're going to do some extended hours, try to capture what I lost in April. All those appointments that we had to push, well, we may stay open till 7 for 1 month. My employees, I've already talked to them. They're gangs. They want to do it too. They want to make up the money that they've lost. So yep. That's another thing that we're going to do, is to really make sure that we get that money, that payroll expense covered. We're going to extend those hours. The other thing that I would add to your thoughts on this capping and where we're at with the funds reaching its cap, I'm not terribly concerned, although I'm a little bit concerned that it won't be extended. But the other thing to take into consideration is that they may put some other requirements on this other money that comes through. So maybe they add money, but for different terms. And that's where I'm looking at and thinking, well, I kind of like these terms. I'm familiar with these. This is why I'm taking the loan as soon as I can. And I'll deal with the strategy of trying to get that payroll cost built into it, even though I can't be open for a couple weeks while I have the money.
Yeah, great point. I think let's move on. We don't have time for any more questions here. But great insight. And the bottom line is I built 9 dental practices from scratch. And what I've learned over that experience is you gotta be open and have the lights turned on and have your staff saying, be our guest, so that if someone calls, they can get in today. If you're only open 2 days a week and you try that approach and you don't really open up and go full bore, like what Brian is saying, you won't bounce back as fast. I promise you that. In offices where I've had a partner, we've only been open a couple of days, it takes a year or two to kind of get things going because my partner didn't want us to go. If you're open up all that time and you take that leap and you open up 5 days, including on Saturday, half a day, boom, you'll bounce right back. Your staff will have their hours. If they're sitting around doing nothing, you don't have to feel bad about it because the government's paying for it because they did this to us to some degree. So that's the strategy, and that's what we're going to be doing. All right, what is it like to apply? Well, we'll go through this real quickly here, but I applied through 4 different banks, including online lenders like Lendio, and they even said you should also go apply at your local bank too, because we're not sure if the funds are going to run out by the time, as a broker, we are able to fund or find someone that wants to fund you. So at first I thought, I'm not sure you can apply to more than one. You can. You just can't accept more than one. And what our experience has been, the bigger banks have put a lot of bureaucracy, built online portals that are unnecessary, asking unnecessary questions that the application form doesn't ask for, making it really hard. Like, what is your NISC number, your industry standard number? Dentistry has one. You can go to online. I don't need that on my form, but the banker needs it when they apply for you. And most small banks are just looking it up for you. The bigger banks are asking you to do it. Some of the bigger banks and some of the small banks too are asking for articles of incorporation and your P&L for the last year. None of that is supposed to be a part of the application process. It's not supposed to be. And so we found that smaller credit unions and banks will absolutely follow guidelines and not put their own guidelines in place. And so we went up to Idaho. I found a bank. I drove up there, a 5-hour. These guys said, hey, we're going to include independent contractors. So I was there. And you can see there was a sign that said, we're closed for COVID. You got to go. It's a small little thing, one little teller. Nice guys. I was so happy I found them. They gave us mugs even. My other banks still had online portals that were still building that weren't live yet. And I think they are now, but they weren't at the time. And so we were pretty excited to see this. The application form is very straightforward. This is an example of it. You can download it. What you have to get, we've gone over the 1094s or the 941s and things. We're going to skip over this real fast. We've already gone over this. But the point is, some banks, point number 2, some banks will make it more complicated. So if you find a bank that's putting a lot of roadblocks in, like you did, Brian, at Chase, you just went somewhere else. You went to a credit union in Utah and you got it in 48 hours, right?
That's right. Chase had a lot of roadblocks, a lot of information that my other one didn't even ask for. So they wanted allocated money. They wanted all the details, and my other, the credit union was quick and easy.
What's interesting here is that most banks, take a look at this. Most people, we did this yesterday, and we asked them, if you've applied for a loan and you've been approved by one, what did you use? Most people, it was a small bank. Or, you add a credit union into it too, but a small bank. My experience has been with the credit union. Wells Fargo's been hard. Citigroup's been the hardest. JP Morgan. Bank of America was really good right out of the gate. Like on Friday, right when the loan happened, they were all set to go and made it pretty easy. And they funded, I think it was 20-something billion day one. It was mostly through Bank of America. Some other banks too, but that's been our experience. So if you haven't yet applied, or if you have applied and you haven't heard from your bank that you've been approved yet, then go find a credit union or a super small bank that you don't bank at and ask them, will you take this piece of paper that I just filled out and nothing else? And if they say yes, we might have found your guys. So There you go. That's been our experience. Now we're gonna go quickly through the family. Taylor, we got just 3 minutes here. We had some more questions too, so I'm gonna skip over this. But
Okay.
briefly, Taylor, what's the update to the Family First that applies
For
to
dentists, what you want to remember is they may very well apply to your practice if you have fewer than 50 employees, a small business exemption to the law. So the Department of Labor, for the paid leave that's been expanded. So Department of Labor has information on their website. They've updated this recently, and look into that and see if it applies to your situation. If it does, you may not need to provide the leave.
Because of that, also when you furloughed your staff, you also don't have to apply.
That's right.
You're not eligible to do the 10 weeks of payment for someone that's caring for a child, or if their school is shut down, which most of our people have that. Most schools are shut down nationwide. So if you furloughed your staff, you also don't have to pay that. And plus, as small businesses now, it looks like the guidance is, we get it, we're not going to force dentists to do this. So our recommendation is you furlough your staff. If you've already laid them off, bring them back on for a number of reasons. You can start working your accounts receivables quicker. You can be open for emergencies and urgent care. We have one of our customers at eAssist who's been with us for 10 years, Dr. Jenkins in Maryland. And she is actually getting people doing FaceTime because some of the laws have relaxed, and then there's some other things that she's doing. But the HIPAA laws have kind of been relaxed for this. She's doing FaceTime, and she's actually looking at the tooth, prescribing antibiotics, having her office manager on the call, setting up Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays full of emergency patients to do, including sedation. And is even making more money now, she said, almost, because her expenses are a lot less, because she has a skeleton crew there. So don't lay off all your staff and shut your doors. Do this instead. Make sure you organize your furlough staff so that they're coming in and they can still be eligible for maximum unemployment. eAssist, of course, also solves this problem. We become an assistant manager's assistant, an office manager's assistant. That's what we do. All the accounts receivables, we ensure that the insurance company pays what they rightfully owe to you. And that's also what we focus on and help deliver peace of mind with. Brian, anything else you want to add to this?
Biggest thing is this staying open is so important. Yesterday, I'll give this experience. I saw 3. Now this may not be a lot for a lot of dentists. It is for me, but I saw 3 cellulitis cases yesterday. All 3 of those patients were not patients of mine, which tells me that's a medical emergency. They can end up in the emergency room for that. It can be a big deal. And of course, dentists know that. I don't need to tell you that, but they couldn't get in to see their regular dentist. And I captured all 3 of those patients because I was open. I had furloughed employees, people who were working on reduced hours. We captured those. I had to refer one of those out to an oral surgeon, but he says, I'm coming back to you because you helped me out. My dad's a patient of yours. He referred me to you because I couldn't get into my dentist. You're my dentist from now on. And so being open is going to also help you build your practice, but it's also doing the right thing. We're trying to keep people out of the emergency room. We're trying to do those things. We're trying to help our own patients that we've been treating for 10 years. We ought to be touchable and be able to see these people.
We're going to talk more about this on another webinar, and perhaps the Benco folks will bring us in too to do it for the Benco group, but our Benco friends. But we have it coming up on the 23rd of how to stay open right now legally and be a doctor right now for emergency care and urgent care if your state allows for that, and some of the strategies that we've learned. And I echo what Brian has said. We get patients calling us saying, I've called 9 dentists and they're all closed. You're the only one that's open seeing emergencies. Thank you. That'll pay dividends 3 months, 4 months, 6 months down the road. That's how we built my dental practices when I opened. I mean, I was such a young, scared dentist. I'd been out of school for a year and had all this debt. I didn't even go to the UDA conventions because those Fridays and Saturdays were like gold to me because all the other dentists were closed. And people would call with emergencies and say, yeah, all the dentists are gone at some party and you're the only guy open. I was like, come on in. Yeah, we'll do that root canal. I'll give you some antibiotic, have you go. It really helped build our practice. The same thing's happening now. You got to look at your office as a startup. We hope you understand better now after this hour you spent with us, what the new SBA guidelines are and how they modified the CARES Act loans that have been modified. We hope you understand.
Quickly. I'm sorry, really quick. You do have a little bit longer, so we are going 30 more minutes. So there's so many questions and there's so much out there. So I know we probably have about 20 to 30 questions. We could probably use that for a lot of the questions. And really quickly, I was just going to ask you, if you were a new dentist, because now you've both been through this, what are you going to think they should be doing right now? Like a brand new practice been open less than a year.
A brand new practice. Yeah, I think that's a great question. Brian, I'll go first, and then you follow up. But
Sure.
If you're a brand new dental practice, you've been open less than a year, it depends if you're making money or not. If you haven't been making money, if you've been burning through cash, it's a different scenario than if you were making some. And so it depends on if you're going to make, are you going to be still burning through cash if you're open? Like if you have an associate that is with you, that's a problem if you're paying a high dollar amount to an associate that you have to have back on board. If you got to find a way to start making money. I remember learning this principle or this concept. Thanks, Kate, for telling us we have 30 minutes. We're going to use the whole time for Q&A here. I remember learning it, thinking that it was weird when I applied for a loan at a bank, when I opened up a brand new practice for the first time right out of school after I'd been out for a year. They wanted 2 years of tax returns in order to get a mortgage for my house. But if one of my employees who I just hired 2 weeks ago or a month ago, most of you know where I'm going with this, if they applied for a loan, the bank didn't ask for 2 years of financials of me, their employer. They asked just for the last 2 weeks of paycheck stubs for this person that was working for me that I can let go at any time if COVID-19 hits or if no one shows up. Like the most important person is the employer, because if they're financially sound, they'll keep people employed. But if they're not, they're the last man standing or last woman standing, right? Like I had to learn this concept that you are the most secure person in your practice if you're the owner. And the idea that by working for someone else, you have some security is really a false sense of security. I don't mean to be offensive there, but it's almost something as if, I don't want to say that we hoodwink people when we employ people. We don't. We're honest about it. But in most states, it's a right to work. And so if I want to let somebody go for any reason, I can. I might have to pay unemployment benefits, which is very, very small. It's unemployment insurance. And so my rates will go up over the next couple of years. But I can let someone go if times are tough. And so I would cut your staff down as much as you possibly can. If you're married, have a spouse, have kids, bring them in to be assistants and front office workers. I remember when I was brand new, I had staff. This is the craziest story. I've been open for like a couple weeks, and I had 2 staff members. They were both paid salary. We worked really hard. I thought I could pay them salary so we could work more than 40 hours a week. Boy, did that backfire. And so I was working really hard. We weren't collecting what we were producing. Maybe it was 70%, maybe it was 60. And a lady comes into the front desk, knocks on the door on a Friday when it had been raining and everybody had canceled that we had on the schedule. And she said, "Do you do bridges?" And she had cash in her hand. "Do you do bridges?" I have never seen that in my practice since, ever in my career since. And so we said, "Yeah, bridges are us. Come on in." I happened to be at the front desk at the time. My jaw drops. This is like an answer to a prayer. Like I don't know how many next week. And this lady has $2,000 cash in her hand. And I said, "Yeah, absolutely. Come on in." And I look over at my 2 employees. They kind of roll their eyes, and it was kind of hard, but I brought them in. I sat the patient, and I came back and said, "Guys, what's going on?" They said, "Well, the whole day had canceled and we had already made plans for the day. We were planning on leaving. And now this patient's coming in, and we have an alignment problem, a severe alignment problem at that moment. But I'm a brand new dentist. I have all this debt. I don't know what to do. My leadership skills I'm trying to develop them. I still have, places to go, but always learning. But it was a really hard moment. I said, "Well, why don't you guys think about it? I can't force you to stay. There are consequences to decisions, but why don't you guys think about it, and I'll come back and I'll numb the patient, come back. You tell me what you want to do." So I came back, and after I numbed the patient, they said, "We've decided to leave." So they both left. My only 2 employees. I am back in the chair holding, and they're paid salary, right? So they're being paid right now. I'm holding the suction like in dental school. I'm doing a bridge. I do the temporary. I bring her up to the front. I know how to use the Dentrix because I set it up, and I collect the money and I get the cash, and then she leaves. And I'm sitting there going, I hate being a dentist. They never told me this in dental school. And the phone doesn't ring. I'm there for 5 more hours. What am I going to do on Monday? When I brought them in on Monday. I said, "Guys, ladies, you're now $9 an hour. That's all you've proven to me that you're really worth. I can't do the salary anymore." Now that backfired. For the next 6 months, they were telling people that I was being investigated by the Board of Dentistry, which was a lie. And the whole thing was hard. And here I am going, man, they ever told me this in dental school? OHSU, why didn't you tell me this stuff? So, but what it taught me is I'm the most secure guy at the end of the day. And so if you're a brand new dentist, open up your practice, if you can't afford to have everybody there, you can bring your wife on, or your spouse or your husband, or bring in your kids, and then pay them as employees the same amount you were paying the others, or even defer the payment out with something, but you can still have all that forgiven because they're not asking which employee you have employed, just the number of employees you have employed. That's important to understand. And how much you're paying your people. I would be open every single day, including Saturdays. I'd be there all day long, just with my scrubs on, doing emails and cleaning everything and ensuring that I'm there if the phone rings. I'd be answering my own phone, which I did over and over again when I built these practices as a young dentist. I'd have perfect brightness of hope, knowing that there's going to be a better day. I spent a lot of time on my knees asking for help. Like, there's a number of things I just make sure we did to button things up and to hold on and make it happen. And it did, time and time again. It did. Brian, what would you recommend a new dentist do at this time?
Biggest thing is you'll get through it. It's a tough time. Now, there's two answers to this, Kay, because there's two types of new dentists. There's a new dentist that's working for somebody, and there's a new dentist that has a new practice. I'd like to run off of what James says, because I have a new dentist that's working for me. And I'll be honest, I'm starting to go, well, I might need to do more of this work to keep myself alive. But if you're a new dentist that's working for another dentist, I would suggest that you go to that owner dentist and say, and treat it like you're the owner, and say, I will come in anytime you want. Let me take the emergency calls after hours. Let me take the weekend phone. Let me take all those calls. And because as an owner dentist, I'm thinking, great, if you can take the Saturdays and you can take all those, you're going to get some of that work, and you're going to survive that way. So the biggest thing is, if you're working for someone else, pretend that it's your practice and that you love that thing, and that and you need it to survive just as much as the owner dentist does. The second one is, if you're a new practicing dentist and you're just opened up your office, again, you're going to make it. I remember going through it too. I started from scratch. I was 6 months into it. I actually worked for James. I went back.
You wanted your job back. I was like, hey, Brian, you'll be fine.
That's right. I wanted my old job back. But you'll make it. If you can just use these loans in any way you can to stretch it out and survive over the next year, you'll turn that corner and it'll make it. If you need to take the EIDL loan because you need more funds to make it longer, in the end, after 10 or 15 years, you will be so glad that you suffered that first year to just make it. Do whatever you can. If it's coming in, take every phone call you can. Drive back out to your office. If they con at 5 and you just left it, go back out there, help those people. You'll build that practice. This is actually probably a really good opportunity for some of you, because you're going to capture patients that more mature, and dentists that don't want to be open right now. They think of this as a month vacation. This is their time to capture some patients. So it could be a very opportune time.
I have a hero of mine, Bill Marriott. He started the Marriott Corporation, and I went to Marriott School of Management, and he started his whole Marriott chain with a root beer stand in Washington, D.C., a root beer stand, not a hotel franchise. And he turned that into a series of 9 little restaurants that are local there, and then built his first hotel, and then started catering food for airlines. And there's a number of things. They grew and grew and grew and grew and grew, and now they're in almost every country in the world, and most of us know Marriott hotels. But what's interesting, their philosophy is what Dr. Borg is describing, a spirit to serve. It's one of ESIS core values. We are servant leaders. We help other people. And if you can really develop that and understand and embrace that concept, that you will serve other people and help people get what they want. Zig Ziglar used to say, if you help enough people get what they want, you'll have all that you want. You have to put other people first. Adam Smith called that the invisible hand. It's what built the industrialized nations. Like, you are forced, almost like by an invisible hand, to help other people and put their needs first in order for you to feed your family. And dentists that get it and have the spirit to serve and work really hard and will be there, answer those calls, show up. I love what you said, Brian, about an associate who were to say, hey, even doctor, if you can't even pay me, I'll take IOUs. I get it. We'll make it happen. And when things get back to normal, we're gonna have this memory together. Another thing you can do, of course, is most states are allowing you to defer your mortgage on your house interest-free, so you don't have to pay those. You also don't have to pay your student loans. Now, some student loan companies are actually contacting you proactively and saying, hey, you don't have to pay your student loans for the next 6 months, or whatever the CARES Act says. I think it's 6.
At least federal student loans.
Federal student loans, that's right.
And federally backed mortgages.
Yeah. Thank you, Taylor, for the clarification.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And others are saying, well, you got to write us an email to say that you want us to hold that. Otherwise, we're going to keep debiting it out of your account or requiring a check. So depending on what you have, also contact your landlord if you own the practice and ask them if they'll defer payment on the until the PPP comes in or whatever, defer payment on your rent. Your utilities, they can't shut off your utilities, from what I understand, in most states. Don't pay that. And they can't ding your credit either. On our website, we had a list of ideas that you could do, including making sure that you have good conversations with folks saying, we want to pay you, we want to make sure we have a relationship that works. And we're not going to take anything for free, but help us here during this time. And most people you'll find will. Okay, we'll get into questions again in just a moment. I just want to invite you to do a few things. Create a thoughtful action plan if you haven't already. How are you going to open up your practice here and get ready for your grand reopening as a startup, including how you're going to get your PPP loans if you haven't yet been approved. If you haven't yet been approved and you've still applied with a bigger bank, go to a credit union or a small bank in your area, call around, walk in by appointment if you need to. Find out who is accepting the actual application, the physical application, rather than an online portal that they've made up themselves, that they then fill out an application for you by adding another step in the process. It's not necessary, and it slows things down, gums it up. And then, of course, we hope that you join some more webinars. We're going to be doing all we can to teach us how to succeed during this crisis and thrive during this crisis so that we come out on top and stronger than we were before. All right, let's do some more questions. Sarah, what else do we have?
All right, we do have a few more questions that have come in. One is from Arpin. He asked, if I'm a multi-practice owner, can I apply for the PPP per office as far as I have different EINs for each office?
If they're different EINs, they are different companies. That's how we recommend you set up multiple practices. Mine are all their own companies for that very reason. Also, it's easier to sell off a practice too if they're their own company. I don't keep them all together. So good job, very thoughtful thinking. You did it. If it's one company and one EIN number, tax ID number, then you can't do that.
It's just one larger loan.
One big larger loan. That's right. If you have more than 500, the per location only applies to hospitals or hospitality, like hotels and restaurants. It doesn't apply to dentists. So if you have more than one location and you're one large EIN and you have more than 500, you're out. You can't. That's my understanding so far. Brian, anything you want to add to that?
Nope.
Okay, Sarah, what's the next question?
Great. The next question we have is from Dr. Lee. He said, my office has been closed since 3/16. My staff and myself are applying unemployment insurance benefits. If we use the PPP to pay their payroll from 3/16, even though they are not working, will they need to stop or refund their received unemployment payments?
I think so. I think if you pay the full amount, you're no longer getting unemployment. And what the Secretary of Treasury said yesterday was that that's like the purpose of this plan, is to keep people off unemployment. He didn't mention dental offices that are forced to close down. He was talking about a small business that would want to lay people off that could still be open, like the gun store or something, whatever. So those, whatever your state has said can stay open, the idea would be don't close those businesses down, even though people aren't driving as much. Gas stations, oil's down. Keep your people employed and the PPP will kick in. And dollar for dollar, this is the point he made, dollar for dollar, it keeps people off the unemployment rolls. So that's the purpose of it. I wouldn't go back, though, and pay people back for March 16th. You don't have to do that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Taylor. You just decide to be open again and start paying people their normal rates, and you get the PPP loan. What I'm going to do, like I said about 30 minutes ago, is I'm going to prepay some of our folks, give them a huge bonus when we're open full time for all the, to get caught up perhaps, maybe a hybrid strategy between the two. So to ensure I get the maximum forgiveness and for the maximum amount of time I possibly can, have our people working. So I'm paying them for 8 weeks rather than 3. That's a strategy I'm taking.
Yeah, and once the employees start to get paid, it's up to them to notify their state unemployment office, and then that benefit would end.
Taylor, the way I understand this question is I don't understand why he would want to go back and pay back a 316, because that money wouldn't be included in the 8 weeks anyways, because the 8 weeks doesn't start until the origination of the loan. So you really wouldn't want to use that money to back pay it. You'd want to use it for that 8 weeks after origination.
Yep.
Yeah, no, fair point. That's right. 8 weeks starts after. I mean, the only reason why, maybe the thinking there behind the question is, if that's going to be part of the period where you're determining, the amount of your loan, the 2.5 times monthly payroll average, right? But what the Act says though is it's either trailing 12 months, and so that could be relevant there. But it also says, I think the SBA said we can't just look at 2019. The whole year. And then James, I think your lender said, let's just look at your first quarter. So again, that may be where the question is coming from, but the SBA has said, and if your lender will let you do it, you can look back at 2019 to determine that average.
Yeah,
so you can avoid this issue.
Because the end of March is part of quarter 1. That's right.
Yeah.
So if you didn't, if you just want to put in, you give them your W-3 for 2019, okay, that's all you need to do.
And there was a second part of this question as well. And I think you guys have kind of touched on it. I just want to read it to make sure we've got the answer fully covered here. He also asked, will our PPP loans be forgivable since the staff are getting paid without working? What's the real purpose of giving employee payroll during office shutdown?
The government wants you, and again, this is for all small businesses, not just dentists, right? So, but they want you to open back up ASAP. They want things to get back to normal as soon as possible, and so that's what they're offering to pay for and forgive.
That's what they're aligning you to do. One thing I've learned about remote work and having our ESS team of 800 is that aligning people that work, aligning people to incentives are critical to helping people stay focused and deliver their best, whatever end result we're trying to get. And so what Taylor just described is exactly the alignment. But the premise is you can't be open full time when your office is closed. You can open a few days and you don't have to be open full time. But as soon as you're ready to go full time, then you bring everybody in and you're open all 5 days, 6 days a week. Like what Brian said, you're open until night, whatever, to maximize and capture whatever revenue you possibly can, or whatever, revenue and whatever employee costs you possibly can after you open. So like what Taylor said, remember, this is not just for dental offices. Most small businesses are struggling financially, and so there might be an incentive to want to close them, even if they can open, to close them, and so that they can't be open. But the strategy we're deploying is what we've already described. We're going to try to push out as long as I possibly can when I get it, when those 8 weeks start, and when those 8 weeks starts, then push out as long as I possibly can before I have to pay everybody and get it back in. Once the government says in Utah, April 26th, you can be live, we're gonna be open 6 days a week, fully staffed, even if patients aren't there, to ensure that we grow fast and rapidly and catch all those patients that can't get into their other dentists' offices because they're only open 2 days a week because they're worried about whatever, not paying. So that's the vision.
Right.
You want to add to that, Brian?
Nope.
Okay, what's next, Sarah?
All right, we've got another PPP question here. Will the PPP still be forgivable if you rehire 75% of your staff, but you also reduce some of the employees' compensation by up to 25%?
To double check all that.
Magic numbers, didn't they? With that, I
Double,
think
double, yeah.
Well, again, I understand. So 2 potential reduction of scenarios, right? And they've touched on both of them in that question. They want you to have the same monthly average of full-time employees during that 8-week period that you did based on looking back to either February 15th to June 30th of 2019 or January and February of 2020. You get to choose, at least that's the current way it's written. So that's the comparison period. And so again, it's full-time employees monthly average. And so you want to maintain that. If you don't, if you're less than either one of those periods, then again, you're reduced by that percentage decrease. Now, on the other question about salary decrease.
My understanding is you could still be, if you reduce past 75, let's say you have 50% of your workforce back. What's forgivable is just 50%, right? Or does it stop at 75?
No, there's no, on this one, on the reduction in full-time employees, that monthly average.
Yeah.
It just says if your average for the 8-week period is less than whatever percentage it's less than what it was in one of those look back periods, whichever one you choose, then your forgiveness amount is reduced by that same percentage.
So if I cut 50% of my staff, then of the look back period, then 50% of whatever, even if I bump up wages, 50% of whatever my loan amount was is forgivable.
Yeah, your forgiveness amount is reduced by 50%. That's what it says.
I think there's going to be some more guidance there, Taylor, because what if what this person's saying, this doctor's asking, what if you bump up the other people you keep, and let's say you cut your staff in half, and then you bump up your other half so that you capture everything that you just cut out. So
yeah, I mean, again, yeah, the way it's written right now is you have the number of full-time employees, the monthly average. That's one comparison point, and then separately you have, if you reduce anyone's salary by more than 25% during that period compared to the last full calendar quarter, then that's a dollar for reduction. So they're two separate reductions. If it's less than a 25% reduction in pay, you're not being deemed in that category, but you still have to deal with the potential reduction in full-time employees monthly average.
I see. So the best strategy may be, if you feel like you can reduce your staff or have to for financial reasons, you can reduce it down to 75% of what you were paying, or 25% less than what you were paying. So you go from $20 to $15, and you're not going to be dinged at all as long as you have the same number of staff members.
Full-time, yeah, full-time staff members is what.
But what about but your payroll costs though? What you've actually spent on payroll is 15 times by whatever now, and only 75. And so you can't, what you're spending on payroll at the end of the day, at the end of 6 months, that'll change.
Right. It will, but again, there's two different reduction points, right? One is number of full-time employees, that monthly average. The other one is, did you reduce wages by more than 25%? So they're looked at separately. They don't aggregate them.
And just like how the payroll cost was modified when it actually became go time and people were giving out the loans, the SBA said, we will give you more guidance on the loan forgiveness when we get closer to it. Right now, we're focused on getting it out. So what we just said may change, and the strategy is going to have to be in flux here. And our website will have updates. We'll give it to the Benco team when we get more information about loan forgiveness.
And I think we've got time for one more quick question, then we're going to hand it over to Kay to do a quick wrap up. I know we specifically mentioned that when you have the PPP loan, you have your 75% and your 25%. And that in that 25%, you can't prepay your mortgage, but we have a question asking if they can use their 25% to prepay themselves for rent. Any guidance on that one?
This may be something that they provide more guidance on. Right now, it just says rent can be one of the forgiven expenses as part of that, 25% bucket. And the condition is it had to have been in place, the obligation anyway to pay rent as of February 15th. Otherwise, I haven't read anything that would restrict prepayment. But again, the SBA this may be part of what they, the details that they provide, later, hopefully soon.
Great. Awesome. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thanks, Kay.
Unmute myself. Thank you. I'm going to tell you, every time we bring you guys on, we learn so much. So I hope, yes, when you get your updates and all the new information, let's just get with Leah and let's get something else scheduled for our Benco family so we can make sure that we stay on top of this. Such good information. I mean, you guys are unbelievable. And I love the fact that you come from being dentist and you've actually gone through it. And I really appreciate you helping with the newer dentists, because it is tough. I know there's a couple of them out there that, they've only been open 2 months and now they have all their school loans, a brand new practice, no clients. I mean, it's just unbelievable. But I think you're right. At the end, what they learn from this, they'll be strong, and taking care of their patients right now and being there for people that need them, I think is a really good answer. So thank you guys very much for all your great information today.
You're welcome, Ken. Thank you.
So guys, if you have any questions, we will make sure that all your questions get answered. I know that you guys had your email address up there. You can email them directly. They're really good about getting back. If you didn't get that, you can actually send it to practicecoaching@benco.com, and we will make sure that we also forward over your information with any questions that you may have to their team, so they can get back to you. And also give us some feedback. You know, if there's other things that you want us to know, maybe other questions that they didn't cover that we could share with them maybe to do in their next webinar, please include those in your email so that we can make sure that we answer all of your questions, and we really want your feedback. And with that being said, I want to talk a little bit about what's coming up next, because we have an amazing workshop, a webinar coming up next. Dr. Gurr is actually going to be speaking on depression. You know, I think that, I think dentists, we're like in the top 5 now for the suicide rate. And, I can only imagine what we're going through right now with having to be home, locked down with our family, worried about all of our bills. What can we do? So we are really trying to find webinars that we think will really help you. And so this webinar is going to be, how do we deal with anxiety and depression during this time? What can we do to make sure if we need help, we reach out for help? And I can't tell you enough, I'm really excited about this one. I think this is something that it's like a hidden disease that we don't want to talk about, but it's out there. Depression is real. Team members can be going through with it. They have to worry about their bills. So I'm really excited about the webinar that we have coming up next. That's going to be at 1 o'clock Eastern time today. And Kelly and Steve are actually going to be joining with me, 2 of my really good friends. And then we're going to also have Catherine Belt. Catherine Belt's going to be coming on next Thursday at 1 o'clock Eastern. And she's going to be really talking about how should we be answering our phones right now? What should we be saying? What's our message? What are we putting out there? I think you guys talked about that, your branding. What is it we're telling our patients? That's going to be an outstanding webinar. So I'm super excited about that one. And then finally, I want to say that, if you need your CEs, it will take about 30 days to get those CEs to you, but we will make sure we do that. If you signed on late and you're signing on with a cell phone, all we ask you to do is please send us an email to practicecoaching@benco.com and send us your cell phone number and your name so that we can cross-reference that. For some reason, your name doesn't show up with your cell phones when you do a Zoom meeting. So please make sure you do that. And then we have one more quick challenge. We'd love for you to post some pictures of yourself, doing some fun things at home, and we'd like to share those on our Benco Facebook page, whether you're doing some webinars like today, whether you're out exercising. And I really, I take this challenge also to our Benco TR reps, all of our Benco people, and our Benco clients. So please send us your pictures, and what you'll need to do is you'll need to share them with us at Benco Dental, and we will be able to then put them on the Benco Facebook page. And who knows, maybe our team will get together and do some type of contest or some type of challenge. So please send in your pictures and on Facebook and share them with our Facebook post, and it's going to be at Benco Dental. Here's our email. If you have any other questions, please give us a shout. Thank you guys again for today. Let us know when we want to get the next one scheduled so we can keep all of our people informed. You did an amazing job. I just love listening to everything you had to say today.
Thanks,
Sarah,
Ken.
you did good too.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Y'all have a good weekend.
You too.
Bye.